Okay, our next presentation is EDeLoriea. It's going to talk about archaeology.
Hello, everyone. As he said, I'm EDeLoriea, and I did my internship with archaeology at Montpelier. Now, I'm sure all of you know this building, probably visited it too. Very important part of our local history and everything. I performed my internship. The reason I chose my topic of archaeology is because it combines two of my favorite subjects, history and science, into one. And I figured it would be the perfect area for me to explore an internship opportunity because I'm interested in both the subjects, and yet this is one area where I had very little knowledge, so I wanted to expand upon that. And I spent a lot of time at this mansion, particularly a little further off to the southwest side. But I also spent a lot of time in this house. Over the summer, I began my internship with a week-long archaeology expedition program with a whole bunch of other students and just other regular people who wanted to experience archaeology for themselves. This house is called Arlington House, and it was actually built before the start of the Civil War. It rests on the Montpelier property, and every day after like 5 to 8 hours on the field working with archaeology, I'd return here and just socialize and talk more about archaeology and everything. Another place I spent a lot of my time during my internship was this building. That's the archaeology office, and next to it, over there, is the archaeology lab. And here's the back entrance to the archaeology lab. You can see the sign a little bit better. So my mentors for my internship project are Dr. Matthew Reeves, who's right there in the funny hat, and then Dr. Terry Brock, another research archaeologist. This picture, they both sent out an email to like a whole bunch of people who attended the expeditions, basically asking for money for an event called Giving Tuesday, in which they're trying to fundraise to rebuild log cabins that former slaves used to live in. But anyway, I worked with these two quite closely during my internship and my community service. Now, over the summer when I was interning, I did a lot of digging, as you would probably guess, because it's archaeology. This picture right here is a unit, and it's a 5-foot by 5-foot square, part of the grid of the mansion grounds. And this is one I, in particular, worked in. You can see that we began to uncover the foundations of a brick wall just inches under the ground. And then there are also some tree roots. You can see the trowels, and you can see knee pads, because when you're going to be on your knees troweling in a 5 by 5-foot square, your knees are going to hurt even with that. So spent a lot of time working on that, learning all the proper techniques for doing a clean sweep, for photographing these when they were done, and for each stratigraphic layer, which is basically each layer of soil. And then here is a rack full of artifacts that I had cleaned, each one individually, with a toothbrush and water, except the nails, of course, and which are in the top corner. You can't clean the nails with water, obviously, because you don't want them to rust any more than they already are. You clean those with a dry wire brush. But once you clean them, you put them back in these very meticulously labeled bags that show exactly where they were found and where they came from. So, and this here is a picture of everyone that went on the archaeology expedition that I was also a part of. You can see me down in that corner sitting right next to my mentor, Dr. Reeves, and you can see my other mentor sitting on this side right here. So, my research question I came up with after my internship, since I served this really early in the summer, and I wanted to explore the relationship between archaeology and oral history. So throughout my research, Dr. Reeves, especially my mentor, he proved to be a very valuable resource, especially when it came to oral history at Montpelier in particular, since he's the director of the archaeology program. And I found that quite a few interesting things, which I'll get to in a little bit. But for my community service, which I also did during the school year, I went back to and worked mostly in the archaeology lab because field work had pretty much stopped by that point. I'm on the back porch of the archaeology lab washing arch mat, or architectural material that they had uncovered, basically just cleaning it off so it can be better observed with a power washer. And here's an inside look of the archaeology lab. Now, you can see that's a lot of stuff right there on that shelf. In the boxes are stuff to be categorized and stored, and in the bags are stuff are items to be picked to be gradient sorted, to a whole bunch of steps through the archaeological process. Now, and here's another view right here of the whole lab and just how many boxes upon boxes of artifacts there are inside. This is a picture of me performing my community service. What I did was I created a whole little series of archaeology videos of the other staff members performing the different steps in the archaeology process. This video in particular, I'm filming a staff member doing a process called picking, which is basically where an archaeologist dumps out a whole bunch of material on a tray in front of them, and then they visually scan over it, use a pair of forceps to pick out different artifacts that happen to be among the mix. And as I filmed each video, I asked them questions that any other person watching the video might have, and they answer that. And they're available on Montpelier's YouTube page. And with the help of my mentor, he actually created a web page on montpelier.org, the official website, and you can access the YouTube links from there. The purpose behind creating these videos, primarily for my mentor, was that he wanted to be able to use these videos as a resource for any future members of the expedition program that I attended. Because when I first went, I had almost no base knowledge of archaeology, just what I read or heard about it before. And when I signed up to go, I got a package in the mail that had an archaeology t-shirt, which I was wearing in that other photo back there, and a small booklet that was co-authored by Dr. Reeves that basically explained each of the techniques that I'd be doing. But what I did with my community service and legacy is provide a more visual method of actually seeing all the different techniques that you would be expected to perform while interning or at an expedition for Montpelier Archaeology. And this is a screenshot of the website, the official page. I wrote the descriptions of each and every one of these videos, and the links are provided below. You can just click on them, and underneath each video it says Montpelier Archaeology, posted by their official page. And so getting back to my research, the cabin itself is not the answer, but it provides part of the answer. So the relationship between archaeology and oral history is that they have a mutual relationship with each other. Archaeology can serve to verify oral history, because if you hear something about an archaeological site, like, oh, this place used to be the kitchen, then archaeology can be performed, and then artifacts discovered can help verify whether or not that oral history was correct. Also, in a different spin, oral history can also help with archaeology, because one specific example I found in my research was in the 1930s during the Great Depression, when the Works Progress Administration created an agency called the Federal Writers Bureau. It hired many people to perform oral history with former slaves, and the former slaves provided a whole bountiful excess of knowledge about artifacts that archaeologists had uncovered that they didn't know the use or purpose for, such as pierced Spanish coins or little objects that look like clenched fists. And with the oral history collected from this project, the purpose of these items, mostly charms to ward off evil, was explained. But the reason I have the Gilmore cabin on here is because the most famous example of early oral history conducted at Montpelier was done with the Gilmore family, who was a former slave in Montpelier. And it turns out that while they can also mutually benefit each other, oral history and archaeology can both harm each other, as in the case here, because there were conflicting documents, archaeological evidence, saying that George Gilmore, who built this cabin and lived in this cabin with his family, had two different occupations. And that got into the oral history and was later proved to be incorrect by Federal Census Bureau, as opposed to the Freedmen's Bureau's message and what they'd written about it. So this is a view from the front porch of Montpelier, the mansion. Isn't that a wonderful front yard? But the significance of my experience, I felt like a valued member of the archaeological team. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about a subject I had almost no knowledge in. And it really opened my eyes to the process that's going on, because I'm sure if some of you had visited Montpelier before, you would have seen them out digging next to the mansion. You might be scared to go up and ask them what they're doing, but they welcome it. I mean, plenty of times over the summer while I was out working in the field, we had visitors come by and they'd walk right up to the fenced off area and ask, hey, what are you guys doing? And they were more than happy to explain. The archaeology lab, which I showed you pictures of earlier, that's fully open to the public. Visitors are encouraged. Unfortunately, only about 5% of visitors, 1 out of 20, goes and visits the archaeology lab. But every time you do, you can learn a little bit more about how history is uncovered at this historic site. Thank you. Oh, wait. Advice, yes. Now, a lot of people have gone before me, and a lot of people have said the same things that I'm about to say. I'm going to tell you don't procrastinate, but you'll probably not listen to me and procrastinate anyway. But anyway, along with a few other people, it really helped me to start my internship over the summer because it lifted a whole bunch of work from my shoulders, because I cannot imagine having done the amount of work I did over the summer during the school year when your senior year is already busy. I mean, I ended up having to go back and continue with internship work along with my community service and filming the archaeology videos. So if you can think of a topic over the summer and you can do that, then I highly encourage it. Thank you.
How did your understanding of archaeology change during the internship? How did a lot of people look at Indiana Jones as a real archaeologist, yet we know it's not reality? So how did your personal views change?
Well, when I first started with this internship, I had almost no base knowledge. I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I had no clue. I mean, I figured I'd be out digging a lot, and that turned out to be true. But my personal perceptions were that there are a lot more steps necessary to categorize each discovered artifact. It's not just like you dig something out of the ground and then throw it in the storeroom or put it in a museum. I mean, it has to go through a very specific process, and almost every step of it I captured in video and asked questions of the staff members and everything. So I didn't know it was as complicated a process as it actually is.
Does all the funding for most of like archaeological sites, is that all coming usually through like schools and universities? I feel like you have very specific interests in preserving history, very important, but I also feel like you want to get paid and there's probably not a lot of money involved in that. Like Montpelier has like probably their own funding source or something else, right? Did you hear any about that at all? Like was anyone there ever worried about any of that type of stuff, that like keeping people hired, making sure that they have enough people working or anything like that?
It didn't seem like there were too many worries about keeping people hired. I mean, they have a good source of funding because they're nationally established historic place, and they have a lot of very loyal people who donate a lot to this program to uncover the history behind the place. So they have good sources of funding. They can just reach out and network and ask, and most former expedition members, including myself, will donate if they ask, so that they could continue with their archaeology.
Kind of makes you wonder how much stuff's out there that people aren't going to find or not learn more about just because they don't have access to that. You know, like it's just lost forever. It's kind of sad. Yeah. Just thought.
Thanks.